welcome back to The Person Everyone Needs. I am your host, Webb Hoggard, and today we're going to talk about when does life begin? And maybe a different way to ask it is, where does life begin? How do you know that life has begun? When you look at the stories of Jesus, there are moments where he is saying to fully grown adults, he will say things like, you need to be born again. What did he mean by that? What did he mean that I came to bring life and bring it more abundant? When we talk about the beginning of life, we live in America. There is a national debate on when the life of a baby begins. For me, I feel like if a heartbeat is the marker of when a life ends, then a heartbeat also should be the marker of when life begins. And we can detect a baby's heartbeat within 8 days of conception. And so, pretty early is what I would say. But I'm not here to tell you about that. What's your political opinion on that? We're in 2024. I'm sure we'll hear a lot of politics this year. So the national debate of when a baby's life begins is not really what I'm talking about. But, throughout history, there's been different markers of when a person became a person. In the Greek people, I believe it was 3 years old. Basically when a child began to speak, it was as if communication, their ability to self-identify through communication, is really the marker of when a life begins. Because for the Greek people, you could get rid of a child until he was about 3 years old without any consequences from the state. Well, maybe it's a different thing altogether. Maybe it's something more like adulthood. You don't really, you're a child. Christians call it the age of accountability. Basically, you don't begin to live until, you're an adult. And what does adult look like? Well, in ancient worlds and a lot of other places on the earth still today, just not America, adolescence ends at about 12 or 13. You become an adult, full of consequences, full opportunity. You are an adult at 12 and 13 years old. So maybe that's what it is. The age of accountability is over, you become a person. Or maybe it's when you could drive a car, or when you graduate high school, or, 30 years ago it would have been when you owned your own home, or when you got married, or when you got a good job. Or maybe it's your life actually begins when you get to retire and do whatever it is that you want to do. I remember when I was in high school, I was convinced, I don't know who it was who said it to me or how many times it got said, but I was convinced that my life was over when I got out of high school. People used to say all the time, you better enjoy it while you can, because I tell you what, when you get out of high school, it's all downhill from here. And I believed them. I don't know why they said such discouraging things, but I have to tell you, if you're a high schooler listening to this, I want you to know something. Your life begins. It begins when you don't have to do what everybody else tells you to do, when you finally get to choose those things. Now, with that, there comes a lot of responsibility. That's what they're talking about, is the lack of responsibility. There is a time in your life where you get to enjoy your life, and then there's a time in your life where you have to make a life. Life begins when you take responsibility for the life you have. When you stop making excuses, when you stop looking over your shoulder, when you stop looking at other people, other circumstances. Hey, I believe all of your reasons and excuses are absolutely merited. They're warranted. They're probably true. I'm not discrediting that, but I'll tell you, no matter how far behind you are, no matter how disabled, no matter how broken, no matter how messed up your family is, I'll tell you this. Somebody who's ever made it, they made it because they overcame the obstacles in front of them. Nobody was ever kept from greatness because of the difficulties in their life. I'm just going to tell you that. And what I mean by that is, I could give you an example, and every single thing that you say is discrediting who you are. I'll give you an example of someone who succeeded with that same malady. You look at history. Abraham Lincoln had one of the most famously horrible marriages in history, and it actually made him a better person. You look at family situations. Alexander Hamilton was an orphan. He was orphaned off of the coast of America, found his way into America by joining a war, and then he basically created the understanding of what we have as the Constitution. That's another American history picture. You look at people who have made lives out of broken families, lives out of terrible health. William Wilberforce is who ended the slave trade in Great Britain, which would eventually obviously trickle over to America. It took us almost 100 years, but thank God for those who saw the barbarism of slavery and overturned it. But he was chronically ill. William Wilberforce was sick most of his adult life. You look at men like the man who wrote Amazing Grace, John Newton. Look at his past. He was a merchant for years, carrying slaves from Africa to England. And from that, he became a preacher and is one of the most famous songwriters in history. And he's a boat captain that made his living off of a horrific trade. Look, what I'm trying to tell you is that your history, those enemies in front of you, those obstacles, no matter what is in your way, you have a way of making a life better. And I'll tell you where it starts. Jesus said, I've come to give you life and life more abundant. Now, Jesus is the beginning of life. If you will turn to him as, number one, a Savior, he wants to save who you are. I don't know where you need to be saved other than I can tell you that your soul needs to be saved. But I can tell you whatever circumstance you're in, whether in your financial issues, whether you're in marriage issues, relationships, maybe you're feeling alone, maybe you've lost hope, maybe you've lost hope in your nation or in your leaders, or maybe you are, whatever circumstance you found yourself, I can tell you, Jesus can save you from your circumstance. Jesus can save your soul. Jesus is also the person you can follow, the person that shows you how to live. He is a model. He is an example. He's the one who shows us how to love others, to live generously even though you don't have much, to bless others when you don't feel blessed yourself. Jesus also models for us that when you need something the most, that's the time to be the most generous with others. We live in a culture today that tells you, self-help, self-care, take care of yourself, get your own rest, make sure you feel strong, beautiful, and kind and good and smart and all the things, when really the thing that will be the most healthy for you is taking care of others. I'm not telling you to never rest. Jesus absolutely took rests. He went alone multiple times to get along with the Lord. But what I'm telling you more than anything is that if you're looking for refreshment in your life, you will not find it in self-help. You will not find it in self-care. If you would like to be refreshed in your life, Proverbs tells you refreshing others is how you are refreshed. And he modeled it. Every time Jesus was overwhelmed by the people, he blessed them. Even in his own brokenness, he was blessing people. When he was headed to the cross, Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. When the man was beside him, mocking him on the cross, on the other side of him, Jesus tells him, not only will I remember you, but you will be with me in paradise. He looks down at his mother. While he's hanging on the cross, he looks down at his mother and he says, Mother, this man is going to take care of you from now on. In his worst moments, he was still taking care of others. And you may say to yourself, well, Webb, I'm not the Son of God. I can't do all that. And hey, I hear you. You're not the Son of God. You're not deity. But I will tell you that the same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead, the same Spirit that gave generosity to God, the same Spirit that brings truth through Jesus' teachings, the same Spirit that was with Jesus, that rested upon him like a dove, the same Spirit that was given to him is offered to you. Where does life begin? It begins where the Spirit of life leads you. It begins where the Spirit of life leads you. And then it becomes your job not to quench that Spirit. How do you quench it? And it's not to grieve the Spirit. Well, how do you grieve it? You grieve the Spirit by doing things that the Spirit cannot be a part of. You quench the Spirit by not doing the things he's telling you to do. Disobedience and darkness. That's how you end life. Where does life begin? It begins where the Spirit of life leads. I hope that you're the kind of person that when the Spirit of life begins to speak to you, you'll do what it tells you to do. You'll go where it tells you to go. You'll use the words it tells you to use. You'll be kind when it tells you to be kind, and you'll be stern when it tells you to be stern. You'll be strong when you need to be strong, and you'll be timid when you need to be timid. And what I mean by that is there is a time to speak, and there is a time to not. There's a time for joy, and there's a time for mourning. There is a time for all things. And if you will be consistent and diligent over time, God is able to make all things beautiful in their time. But you have to be patient in order to wait and see things done right in their time. You're not going to see everything you want this year, but you will see everything you want if you won't give up. Keep believing, keep dreaming, keep pushing. Where does life begin? It begins where the Spirit of life leads you. And those who follow that Spirit, the Spirit of life, the Spirit of hope, the Spirit of joy, the Spirit of kindness, the Spirit of truth, the Spirit of comfort, the Spirit of power, the people who follow that Spirit, that follow that Jesus, that follow the God, the giver of life, that's the person everyone needs.